How are you?
Good.
I look forward to this every week. You know that? But there's a lot of people out there look forward to this every week. But it's a little different today because you have to go somewhere today.
Yes.
And so as a result, we're filming earlier, but a lot of people are going to be tuning in at 3 o'clock and they'll say, did I miss it? And I'll say, no, you didn't miss it. We had to do it earlier, right? Yeah. Are you going off to have a little fun today?
Yes.
Are you involved in brownies or Girl Scouts or anything like that?
Yes.
What are you involved in?
Playing.
Well, which group? Do they have different groups in Scouts? They call them like brownies?
Yeah.
And what else?
I'm not sure.
Well, so they have brownies and they have Girl Scouts. It's really neat. But one of the things I know, because I always notice it at our house in the springtime, usually when they arrive, it means Lent's almost here. And that is something that people buy, and it happens to be in boxes, and it's called cookie. So do you sell those cookies?
Yes.
I know you do.
And where I'm going is Great Wolf Lodge.
And why do you get to go to that place?
Because my sister earned it.
Oh, see that? I just happen to think that you sold cookies, you have so many cool friends, and you know, that's what happens with the Israelites and all the reading we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they had really good friends, and sometimes they had some people who were not such good friends.
And they were mean.
They were mean. And you know, today's lesson, which is really kind of interesting, lots of people know about this fellow. In fact, can you see the name right there?
Sam.
Yeah, Samson. No, that's exactly right. And you know, right now, a lot of people haven't been going to get their hair cut lately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, that's because of the COVID-19. So a lot of people aren't going to get their hair cut. And for Samson, it would have been a good thing if he had never gone to his hairstylist. So let's find out what that's all about. And this, if you're following, is from the 7th chapter of Judges all the way to the 16th. Now, the Jews had won a great victory over the Midianites and Amalekites without striking a blow, for in the darkness and in the confusion and excitement, when the enemy saw the flickering lights and heard the trumpets blowing, they thought that a huge host of Israelites was attacking. As a result, they fell to fighting among themselves, mistaking one another for the attacking Jews, and they all fled and scattered. But one victory of this sort was a long way away from a successful war against the invaders. So Gideon gathered a large army and conducted a campaign to follow up his first victory. Some of the Jewish cities, for fear of the invaders, refused to give help to Gideon. And when he had finished defeating the Midianites, he returned and destroyed the cities that had refused to help him. He captured and killed the various kings of the Midianites. The Jews then asked Gideon if he would be their king, but he replied that they should have no king but God. And sometimes we actually call God this in the Bible, so let's look and see. Jehovah, that's right. And the land had peace for 40 years as long as Gideon was alive. You know, I'm the 8th bishop of Quincy. And the very, very first bishop of Illinois adopted a motto that continues in the Diocese of Quincy to this very day. And that motto is Jehovah Jireh, which means God provides. So we get to see this name a little bit more when we're reading this book. Some people say you shouldn't say that name because it's such a very important name. But we are reading it in this wonderful book by Father Rogers. Now, Gideon had had a great many wives. And when he died, he left 70 sons. Did you hear that? 70 sons. Can you imagine what happened when they started losing their teeth?
What?
Overwhelmed the tooth fairy. Right? Woo! One of these sons, a boy named Abimelech, whose mother was from Shechem, went to the people of Shechem and planned with their help to establish himself as king of the Israelites. He hired a lot of tough guys, his bodyguards, and went to the city of his father where he killed off all of his brothers except one, Jotham, the youngest, who was not at home at the time. Then Abimelech had himself crowned king. By this time, the Jews had once again begun to worship the heathen gods. And they'd become very immoral. The first thing you know, the people weren't a bit happy with their new king, Abimelech. Even the people of Shechem who had plotted with him to kill Gideon's other sons. A man named Gaal plotted with the Shechemites to rebel against Abimelech. But Abimelech heard of this plot and waged war against Shechem, capturing the city and destroying it and its people. But right away, another city rebelled against Abimelech, the city of Thebes. Abimelech then attacked it, and the people fortified themselves in a tower. I'll bet you if all the signs around here on the highways had some of these names on there, there'd be a lot of confused people. Yeah. But you know what? I saw a sign the other day, and it was pointing to Corinth.
What's that?
Well, it's a city in the Holy Land. And I said, where's Corinth? And they said, oh, no, it's pronounced Corinth. So then I was talking to somebody else the other day, and I said, where are you from? And they said, Palestine.
Where's that?
Well, it's in Texas.
Oh.
But I've been to Palestine in the Holy Land. So every now and then I'm a little bit confused. And then I'm wearing my Pittsburgh Pirates hat because I'm a Pittsburgh Pirate fan.
Yeah.
But I saw a city the other day named Pittsburgh. It didn't have an H on the end. So I don't know how you get all these names and figure them all out. But be careful of the signs. If you turn on that sign that says Corinth, or as the locals say Corinth, you will not wind up near Samson. I just need to tell you that. Well, so you see what happened. Another city rebelling. People fortified themselves. They had to have a fort, and so they had to have a tower. Abimelech and his men were going to burn down the tower and all the people in it. But a woman who was helping to defend the tower threw a huge stone down from the walls of the tower, and it landed right on Abimelech's head and crushed it like an egg. Woo, not good. And that was the end of Abimelech. Although I must say, he sort of had it coming to him, don't you think?
That's what the book said.
I guess it's what it says, but what a way to go. The Israelites, as we have said, had stopped worshiping God and began to worship all of the false gods of the heathen. The idols that weren't really gods at all. Pretty soon, the Philistines began to oppress the Israelites. And the Ammonites invaded and conquered them. Then the children of Israel repented. You know what that means, repented? Is all, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that again, I'm sorry. And they began to pray to God to deliver them once more. God said, I'm getting tired of this foolishness. Time after time you've deserted me to worship idols. Time after time when you repented, I helped you out of your trouble. But as soon as you have peace and you go chasing off after those silly idols again, what happens? Now you can just pray to your idols and see if they will help you. So, that's what's being said by God. God looks at them and says, hey, you know what? I'm here to help you. You know what that happens in our life sometimes? God keeps saying, I'll help you, I'll help you, I'll help you. And somebody says, oh, no, I'm going to check in with somebody else. Hey, what's your opinion about that, people? Or let's turn on the television and see what they have to say about it. And God is saying, excuse me, all you have to do is talk to me first. So we're still doing that sort of thing today. It's just that today we have different kinds of idols, don't we? So the Jews destroyed all the idols and tore down the temples of the idols and prayed all the harder to Jehovah to deliver them. There lived in Gilead a man named Jephthah, and he was a mighty warrior. The people of Gilead had exiled him. You know what that means?
No.
You're out of here.
Oh.
But when the Ammonites made war against Israel, the Gileadites sent for Jephthah and told him if he would come back and help them fight against the Ammonites, they'd make him the ruler of their city.
These are strange names. And they're hard to pronounce.
They are. Don't you have some of these people in your school?
No.
No? When you're on Zoom, do any of those names pop up in your class? Okay. So Jephthah sent messengers to the king of Ammon and said, how come you're fighting against us? What harm have we done to you? And the Ammonites replied, when the Israelites came up out of Egypt, they took our land away from us. We want it back. Now Jephthah sent messengers again and reminded the Ammonites that was 300 years ago. It's a long time to hold a grudge, don't you think? Yeah, I mean, the United States has been a nation for well over 200 years. But I hope we don't still hold a grudge against the British. Well, or are they against us? Not sure. We'll check on that another time. Yeah, I think what we do is we make tea in a microwave just to anger the British. But there you are.
But it probably not taste as good.
Doesn't taste as good. I'll tell you what. When people say I want a nice cup of tea, they're not talking about something from the microwave. I'll tell you that. So that is a long time to hold a grudge. And besides, when the Israelites first came from Egypt, they asked for peaceful passage through the land and promised not to hurt anything but a diplomatic argument. Almost never accomplishes anything, and it didn't this time. In other words, let's sit down and have a nice conversation. We'll talk about that. Well, the war continued, and Jephthah prepared to wage a campaign. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're right there. Waiting for that wonderful word for you. Ammonites, that's right. Yes, sure sounds like a stone, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Before he left home, he made a vow that if he were successful in his campaign, the first thing he laid his eyes on when he returned home would be offered to God as a burnt offering. Sure enough, he was successful and defeated the Ammonites and restored peace and liberty to the Jews. When he came home, his only daughter came out to meet him, and Jephthah said, heavenly days, what foolishness have I done? For he remembered his vow. He was about to back down on his vow, but his daughter insisted and said, Father, if you made a promise to God, got to keep it. So Jephthah's daughter went off to the mountain for 2 months to pray, and when she came back, Jephthah offered her as a sacrifice, and he was sure broken up about it. For a long time after that, all the girls of Israel set aside 4 days out of every year to keep a feast and a fast, and mourn for the daughter of Jephthah. The people of the tribe of Ephraim didn't much like Jephthah and the Gileadites, and felt they were getting too self-important. So they sent word to Jephthah saying, why didn't you call us to help you fight against the Ammonites? You've hurt our feelings. We feel slighted. Oh, isn't it terrible when people's feelings get hurt? Yeah. You know how we work on things like that? We always do our best, try not to hurt people's feelings. Yeah, sometimes it's unintentional, but there you have it. So they attacked Gilead. Boy, how stupid can you get? So Jephthah's men fought against the Ephraimites and defeated them. Now, the remnants of the Ephraimites' army had to straggle back home, one at a time across the Jordan River. But Jephthah's men captured and held the river crossing. Whenever a man come along, they'd ask him if he were an Ephraimite, and actually, whether he was or not, he'd say, no. Say no. No. However, the Gileadites knew that the people that spoke the dialect of Ephraim had trouble pronouncing the sound sh. Sh. Do it again. They couldn't do that. So when they said sh, it came out sh. All right. So they'd ask all the people who came to the river crossing to pronounce Shibboleth. So can you say Shibboleth?
Shibboleth.
Guess what? The Ephraimites couldn't say it. All they could say was Sibboleth. That's the way they could tell the Ephraimites from everybody else. It's a little bit like here. when I lived in Pennsylvania, I went and bought insurance.
What's that?
Well, you know, for my house and for my cars.
Oh, yeah.
But when I moved to Texas, all they sold was insurance.
What's in?
Well, it's the same, it's just pronounced differently. So I can usually tell when somebody's from the part of the country I'm from and the part of the country that we're living in now. Instead of insurance, it's insurance. So, there you have it. You can usually tell when you listen carefully to somebody. For example, when people where we live are planning to do something, they say they're fixing to do something. And it took me a while to figure out that they weren't a repairman. Because repairmen come to fix something. Well, you'll run across references to this over and over and over in English literature. In fact, you want a little fun with that. When I'm with my Jewish friends, I always say to them, shalom. But when I'm with my Palestinian Christian friends, I say to them, salam.
What's that?
Same thing. But one pronounces the sh and the other one does the s.
What does that? What do they mean?
Well, let's think about this for a moment. There's a really important city in Israel. It's where the temple was built. It's where David was the king. And it is called Jerusalem. City of peace. So shalom and salam mean peace. But not the kind of peace that people mean when they run around and say, peace, peace, we want peace, we want peace. Very different. It's like we say at Mass every Sunday, it's the peace of God which passeth all understanding. In other words, it's real peace, not just like peace and quiet. So, an angel appeared to the wife of a man named Manoah, who hadn't been able to have any children, and promised her a son who would deliver the Israelites from the power of the Philistines. But, said the angel, he must never drink any strong drink. What's strong drink?
A drink?
Yeah, what's a strong drink?
Like, if it has bubbles?
Couldn't drink wine, and couldn't drink liquor,
So,
and couldn't sit around and have a beer with his friends.
so we could have
Alcohol?
alcohol.
Yep, strong drink. No strong drink. And he must never get a haircut. Although I was watching a baseball game last night, and I think a few of the baseball players must think that their name is Samson. So, Manoah and his wife made a sacrifice unto the Lord, and the angel got on the altar and rode up to heaven in the fire and smoke of the sacrifice. In due time, Samson was born. Samson grew up to be incredibly strong physically, but he was about as weak. Yeah.
What do you mean?
Da, 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 big muscles.
Physically. What do
That
you
means
mean?
he had strong physique or body, but he was weak morally. Now that means he was strong on the outside and weak on the inside. Yeah. So, all in all, he wasn't the kind of person you'd sit around and admire and say, ooh, I want to be just like him. Although he knew God had warned them against having anything to do with foreign women, Samson liked Philistine women. Now, you understand the problem there.
What?
These two groups aren't getting along too well, and so this means there might be some kind of a fight. So, he fell in love with a woman in Timnath, a Philistine city, and once, when Samson was going courting, dating, a lion met him on the road, and Samson killed the lion barehanded. Can you imagine that? Woo! Another time, I know it. I mean, this is strong. Another time when Samson passed by, he saw that bees had built a hive in the lion's skeleton. Yeah, I don't know about you, but if I saw honey and I wanted some honey, I'd want to make sure that lion was really dead before I put my hand in there. So Samson eventually married the Timnath, and gave a wedding feast. There were 30 Philistine men who came, and they made a bet with Samson that they could guess his riddle. He said, ready for this one? Think about this riddle. It's a little bit like the knock-knock jokes you and I do. Yeah, okay. He said, out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. Now that was a riddle. And in order to answer it, you have to remember the story I just told you about the two things that happened with Samson. Now, here's what we're looking at. He was referring to the honey in the carcass or skeleton of the lion. And if they could guess it, they would get 30 new suits of clothes. I mean, they could go to Target and buy out half the clothes there, right? Is that where you get some of your clothes?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I also get clothes from Justice. That's the place I really like.
So Justice is your favorite place.
And
So,
then my second place is
okay, well, it's like all of a sudden they were going to get a pass to go to Justice or to Target and get 30 new outfits. But if they couldn't guess it, they would have to give Samson 30 suits of clothes. And even though these people were Jewish back then, I don't think they were wearing Levi's.
What are we? Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the men wear.
Yeah. Samson's wife enticed him to tell her the answer, and he told her. And she told the Philistines. As a result, Samson lost the wager, and the girl married somebody else. Samson was so mad that he killed 30 Philistine men and took their clothes to pay off his bet. When Samson found out his wife had married another man, he got even madder, more angry. And he caught 300 foxes, and he tied their tails together 2 by 2. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty tough. I don't know how he kept them still. And put a firebrand in their tails and turned them loose in the Philistine grain fields. Naturally, you understand what happened there. Their tails on fire. Okay? All these foxes, 300 foxes. They run into the grain fields, and what happens to all the grain in the fields? Burns up. All burns up. But it also means, I'm sorry. I know the foxes were. This story existed before PETA. So anyway,
What's pizza?
oh, it's a group that wants to make sure we never handle any animals. So we can sometimes say in the Bible, we cannot always say no animals were harmed in the writing of this Bible. So, well, the Philistines were now really out to get Samson and sent an army through the land. The Jews came to Samson and told him what was happening. So Samson let the Jews tie him up and turn him over to the Philistines. But when he was in the midst of the Philistine camp, remember I told you, he was super strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he broke the ropes and picked up the jawbone of a donkey, and he used it as a club, and he killed 1,000 of the Philistine soldiers. Can you see one man with a jawbone going off and doing something like that? Yeah, I know. So Samson next fell in love with a woman named Delilah.
I have a friend named Delilah.
Do you have a friend named Delilah?
Yes. Finally, a normal name.
See, a normal name. There you are. And Samson started to date her. So the Philistine lords came to Delilah and offered her a lot of money, a big reward if she'd find out the secret of Samson's strength. Remember what, in the early part of the story, where Samson's mom was told that there's two things Samson should never do. Number one, he could not drink alcohol, strong wine.
Yes.
And the other things, he could never
cut his hair.
That's right. So, here's what's happening. She teased and teased Samson until he told her that if he got a haircut, he'd lose his strength. So, one day, when he was taking a nap in her house, she cut off his hair and called the Philistines. And they captured Samson. And he tried to fight them off like he had before, but he was too weak because all his strength was gone.
That's mean.
Really mean. But the next part's even worse. The Philistines put out his eyes. They made him blind. And they bound him with brass fetters, like putting chains and handcuffs. And they made him grind corn in the prison house, which meant he couldn't see what he's doing. He kept pushing big stones. And it was like grinding up all of this corn.
They're the meanest people in the...
Well, I knew
Well, they were.
I know it. They were.
Because that was
Long time ago.
years.
Long time ago.
And now it's 2020.
It is 2020. You bet it is. Wow, who could believe it? Boy, how's that? I remember my eye doctor always said, you know, the goal is to have 20/20 vision. But here we are. Then one day they were having a big religious festival to their god named Dagon. And they brought Samson into the temple so people could watch while they mocked and laughed at him, made fun of their great enemy who was now blind and helpless. What are some things they might have said when they looked at him, saw that he was blind, didn't have any strength anymore?
You can't do anything because you're now weak and you're blind, so we can do whatever that we want with you.
Absolutely. They would have said we can do anything we want just for what you
Just
said.
like hurt you a lot.
Hurt you a lot? They wanted to do that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Well, however, what they didn't know was that Samson had finally learned some sense.
What is that?
Well, it means, remember I said he was really weak inside?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he must have said a prayer because suddenly his brain started to work. And he had repented from being such a fool over Philistine women. He had prayed and God had forgiven him. See what happened? He repented. He knew he was wrong, so he asked for God to forgive him, and he repented. God forgave him, and all the time he'd been in prison, guess what happens when you're in prison all locked up?
What?
What are some of the things that might start growing back?
Hair.
Hair. Wow.
Because sometimes, never mind.
Oh, it's true. Your hair starts growing back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, with me,
It's been you've been there for a couple of years.
that's right. If he'd been there a couple of years, the hair would come back. Now, it's not worked for me. So he'd been in prison, and his hair had been growing back, and his great strength came back to him. Yep. Now he's strong again. Samson was standing between the two main pillars, like big posts, that supported the roof of the temple. He put one hand on each of them, like that. And
he pushed them, and
he
then he
did.
came out.
He prayed, gave a big shove, and the two main pillars of the temple pushed out sideways.
Well, if he's strong, then he would probably do that.
That's right. The roof fell down, and Samson was killed along with thousands of the Philistines. It was said that Samson killed more Philistines in his death than he had in his lifetime by pushing back.
He also died?
He died too. I know. It's a very sad story in one way, but I think there's something we can learn from this, isn't there?
Yes.
Even though we might not always understand all of these stories completely, and we wouldn't want to do all those things the same way they happened.
That the people do.
Yeah, but what it does teach us is we were really waiting for God to show up and show us how to do things the right way. And then years later, God did in fact come into the world. In fact, he sent his only begotten Son into the world. And his name is?
Eve.
That's right. And you know what, Betty? You can forget the names of a lot of these people that we're reading about, but never forget the name, that's right, of Jesus.
And
That's right. Thanks, Betty. I hope you have a wonderful day, sweetheart. And I really love when you and I get together like this. Thanks.